setting up a meeting for a live stream. But I would assume we're probably...
Meeting's now live on Facebook.
Super. Wonderful. So I'm here with my friend Penny Gundry. And Penny, it feels like a real privilege to get the opportunity to see you again after so long. You are really my introduction, I think, to coaching in Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was living in London when we met. You were living in Ireland, and I was mentoring on a training program. And so were you. And I think it was probably 12 or 13 years ago, at least. And then by pure chance, I bumped into you on the ferry once with my baby daughter, and Penny had lived with me through the trauma of trying to have this child through countless failed attempts at IVF and all sorts. So you were just, it was a lovely experience to share that journey with the newborn baby. Penny, you're joining me to talk about your Bead Trail work. And I'm hoping that you would start off by kind of giving us a bit of background. I loved the title of the paper you wrote, for example. So kind of how you came to that moment of developing Bead Trail.
It's just so nice to be here and have this opportunity to talk to you today. And isn't technology amazing?
It's pretty brilliant, isn't it?
Well, it has been quite a journey, both of us mentoring in Ireland, and you in Ireland now, not myself, I'm now in the UK. And yeah, so I have been coaching for quite a few years, but my journey, my story started when I was training as a therapist, which was quite a long time before that. I was quite young. And I was, you know, really keen, and had my first client came to me as a therapist, as a proper family therapist. And the client arrived and I said, you know, the standard thing that we say, what do you want to work on? What's important for you now? And she just looked at me in silence and couldn't put it into words, what she wanted to talk about. So we sat there and looked at each other. And I'm thinking, what do I do next? A real rookie as a therapist. And into my head popped, why are you relying so much on words? And then I wrote my thesis for the training was when words fail. And I started to use objects and art and different things. So when I trained as a coach, quite many years later, when I trained as a coach, and now I don't operate as a therapist, I only operate as a coach, I instinctively started to use objects in coaching and play with it and develop it. And I started off, as I know you have, Marianne, as well, using objects. I had a little box of objects that I would bring to a session, and I would have a little, oh yeah, lots of different objects.
I'm showing my little box of stuff.
I'd have a little lighthouse, and I'd have a key, and I'd have a coin and a battery, all the standard things. So the person would tend to choose the lighthouse for the goal, and the key for something significant, and the coin for money, and and the battery for energy, and that was fine. But then when I started to use beads, buttons, and stones, it freed up the process completely, because anything can mean anything, can't it? So a big bright red bead can mean money, it can mean fear,
warning,
it can be a thought,
yeah,
it could be absolutely anything, and it's only what you make of it. So that freed up the process completely to start to use objects in a new way and a different way.
There's a whole history to beads. We were talking about it before, and Penny, about stillness beads and using beads on a thread, for example. You know, I'm in Ireland. There's we have the rosary, people have worry beads, and you were talking about the difference between stillness beads and using them as kind of significant objects in their own right.
Yes, I started off with using beads, as I've just explained, and then someone said to me from Ireland, said, why don't you put them together, because you're very into stillness and meditation. So I ended up with the stillness beads, which is a thread of about 14 beads, and there are very specific meditations we can do, like counting and feeling the texture, and kind of working through them, being aware, just coming into an awareness. So it's like a stillness practice that I've developed with those beads. So that's another, and you know, I think it's really important for us as coaches to hold that space for ourselves. I suppose the fundamental belief that I have is that we can only take our clients to a place that we are familiar with ourselves or understand ourselves or can go. And
absolutely,
when you're in that when you can hold a still space for yourself, and when you can be aware and take that time, then I think that enhances our skills as a coach. I think it's probably one of the most important things, because then we can hold presence, can't we?
absolutely. I really felt it profoundly with the onset of the pandemic. I've harped on about this before, but I felt this literal kind of wave of anxiety coming across the world towards me here on the far northwest coast of Ireland. And I found coaching really hard because I was really distracted. And I found, holding my presence with a client really hard because they were distracted, I was distracted. So I really learned the value of all sorts of different stillness practices. You're absolutely right. You know, we can't.
Yeah, we need to put the time in for ourselves.
We have to. You were asking the question about two questions when we were talking a while ago. One was about how we prepare ourselves and our practice for a changing world. And then the other one was about whether we're relying too much on the spoken language in our coaching. I'd love you to kind of talk a bit more about, well, perhaps start off with preparing ourselves. I think it is something to do with developing our own stillness practice.
In whatever way, form that is for us, because we're all different, aren't we? I mean, I think, you know, we talk a lot about technology and a changing environment that we're in and being agile and that we've kind of almost well, a bit of got a handle on that now. We use it every day. But what about us in a chaotic, changing world where we don't know what tomorrow is? I think, you know, we've never been in control, but I think it's kind of really in our faces now, isn't it? We're really not in control. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think as coaches, we have this opportunity to lead, to hold the space for people to explore that and to feel a bit unsafe and to go to the difficult places, the dark places that perhaps they need to go to, and to work out a new future for themselves and the shape of things to come. We are in that unique position, but we can only do that if we can hold that presence for them. And to do that, we need to go in to ourselves. We need to kind of be aware and still and present ourselves enough so that we can hold that space for our clients. And that's what I think, for me, that is a big thing. I know that the biggest piece of work that I can do is not spend the hours and hours on LinkedIn and get more and more clients and drive my business. I mean, that is really important, but the bigger part is actually when I feel suddenly, oh my goodness, I need to stop, there's something, I just need to sit. I just need to hold this space now, and I just need to sit and to listen to that in ourselves. And quite often we don't want to, because we get really busy and we want to just go, and we want to achieve, we want to help people. But the other side of that is to stop and to sit and to do whatever practice, go for the walk, be mindful for ourselves now, because I think that is going to be the bit that's going to help people most.
Absolutely. You know, we need to walk the talk. We a lot of us are working with clients who are complaining about burnout or feeling stressed or being too busy or working crazy hours. And many coaches that I come across are stressed, busy, working long hours because they are just, focusing on that side of being a coach rather than the core, which is this work that we're talking about now. It's the congruence, the sitting with ourselves, the ability to notice our own thoughts, to notice the impact we have on the world. and the impact the world has on us, all of that stuff.
I've noticed something about wanting to help people a lot. Want to help and to go out and do our bit for the pandemic. And I get that completely. We all need to do that. But I think one of the biggest ways we can help is to go in.
Yeah.
It's a bit more painful, and perhaps we don't. It's easier to go out. It's easier to help other people and to go off and be busy. But I think we can help the world, because if we were all centered and able to notice our own stuff and our own mistakes and admit our failures and go to those dark places and be honest with ourselves, then I think we'd have a lot less angst in the world. Absolutely.
Penny, what about the question of relying too much on the spoken language? Actually, sorry, I've just had a thought come up to me, which is, you may remember this exercise. I do it with the coaches that I mentor, an exercise that we did together in Thurles, which is coaching without the content, and just really encouraging coaches to zone in on their clients' body language and energy levels as they ask some questions, but they don't know the stuff. They can't get attached to the nosy questions. I think that you're right. I think we are too dependent on spoken language. And I'm wondering whether there is, you know, an important role for using objects like beads going forward.
Well, when we work online so much, we are starting to rely more and more on words, aren't we? Breakout groups and talking to each other, and we've got less visuals. We can't see how
can't see people's bodies. We're just seeing this much of them. I'm showing my head. You know?
And as a coach, we tend to look for indications as to when to stop talking and let somebody think. And, you know, they're looking up and we keep the silence. And I find that more difficult. I did a group retreat, actually, and I was missing clues, and it was uncomfortable for me because I couldn't see them all fully. There were things going on in the room, and I couldn't kind of grasp it. But that is something that we can now develop these skills in, because now, having had a bit of experience, I would know to say less and to sit and trust the process. And certainly when we have objects, you know, we might, you know, I have beads and they're all kind of shapes and colors and sizes, and some of them are glass and some of them are ceramic and some of them are wood, and there's so many different types. You know, when somebody is working with them, even online. So I have a situation where I'm working with people with the beads and buttons, and they're looking down. So they're going into the zone, and I'm kind of holding that space with them, and I just trust the silence and let it go. And now you're stepping back and you're getting out of the way. And I think that is the powerful piece, is when we get out of the way and trust. People know what they're doing, and they will look back up and they will engage with you if there's an awkward silence.
There's something also what you were talking to me about earlier, which I can really relate to as well. Well, it's a naff way of putting it, but I completely get the sense that we're using different parts of our brains, you know, the different neural pathways when we're looking at objects, to the stuff that we're using to articulate words, to process in a different way, you know, the touch and the visual clues and all of those different, we're triggering different parts of our brain. It's fascinating in itself.
Yes, I'm very interested in neuroplasticity and the neural pathways, because the research more recently has shown that, unlike how we thought that the brain just gets formed, it actually constantly changes, and we can develop it right the way through our lives.
We can design our own thinking, if you like.
And I think that is quite critical. Now, we have about 50,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of them are the same as yesterday, which is
mine's normally, what am I having for tea?
So we go round and round, and when we have conversations with people, we talk to people, those thoughts are going round and round and round, the same thoughts as yesterday and the day before. But when we do something like doing the beads, so I might ask a client, you know, to what they want to work on, and they might say, well, I want to decide, you know, it's a simple example, I want to decide whether to move to Paris or Berlin. So they choose a bead for Paris and they choose a bead for Berlin, and the other beads might be chosen for fear, family, my team, anything, absolutely anything, a blockage, and they start to lay them out. But what happens is that when they start to move them, you know, Berlin up in the one side and Paris down in the other, what they're doing is they're spatially moving things around with their hands, which we know triggers different parts of the brain to kind of work in a different way. So I think it's even moving them, looking and moving and spatially working allows the brain. So in that situation, I mean, I've changed the topic a bit, but it's a real life situation that I had with a client. So suppose he was saying, like, do I go to Paris or Berlin? And he was working away at this in a very deep way and trying to work it out. There was struggling for himself. He kept moving his family around. It was all about the family, and then his team, and then location, and something else going for him. And then he sits back, suddenly he sits back, and that's when you need to hold the space. Yeah. Sits back and he's like, head to his hand to his head, what? And I say, is there any other beads you want to add? Is there anything to take away or to add to this? And he runs back to the big plate of 400 beads, buttons and stones on the table and picks up another one, runs back and puts it down. He said, it's Amsterdam. I'm like, is it? Of course. Why did I think of that before? It's Amsterdam. And then he moved his family, his team, his this, his that, and everything combined together for Amsterdam. And that was just, you know, he was laughing and he was like running out the door saying, it's Amsterdam. but it was the moving and seeing that the Paris was getting further and further away, and Berlin just didn't feel right next to the family, that he could actually start to, and he did all that work himself. I mean, what was I doing? Just sitting there.
I think it's very empowering to literally be able to move things somehow. I've done a small exercise with my daughter with some of her friendship, a little thing that happened with her friends, moving things around to represent the friends, and it was good because she realized that she could control the situation by taking certain actions, and that was a massive shift for a 10-year-old. Wow. To be able to think that, you know, I have a responsibility and a part in this dynamic. What can I do? You know, it's wonderful learning. Penny, did you want to have a practice run with anything or share any work?
I would love to do it. If anybody who's listening, it'd be nice to do a little visualization. Will we do a little visualization?
Let's do that. And we know that some people might be listening in live and some people might listen later in a podcast. So just make sure you're in a safe place to be doing this.
Yeah, don't be driving when you're doing this.
Yes, definitely don't be driving or handling heavy machinery.
It's only a very quick one, and of course it's really important to say at this stage that it works differently for everybody, and just go with it. So what I do is I just get you to put your feet on the ground and to do a couple of breaths in and out. So you may want to close your eyes, just breathing in for about count of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold. And then breathing out for like 4 to 6. Just one more as well. So you're kind of breathing in to a count of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding. And then breathing out. Just letting go a bit. Breathing back to normal, just aware of your breath. And if thoughts come into your mind, that's fine. Just go with whatever. Even if you're feeling anxious, it doesn't matter. Stay with whatever is happening. And then if you can, I want you to imagine that you're walking on a beach or down a forest, wherever comes into your mind. So we'll imagine it's something like a beach, and feel the sound or whatever's underneath on your feet. Imagine the smells and the wind in your hair, sun on your back. And what you see in front of you, the the glistening lights through the trees or through on the waves. Perhaps a taste even of the salt or the air. And I want you to imagine that in front of you somewhere on the ground is a bead that seems just to have been dropped, but it's sparkling in the sand or in the trees, in the grass, wherever you are. It's sparkling there and it's taking your attention. So go up to it in your imagination and pick it up. Now this bead can be any shape, any colour, any texture. But just hold it between your fingers and have a good look at it. And if something else comes into your hands, that's also fine. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. It's like a gift to you. What does it feel like? What's its texture? Is it warm or cold to the skin? Just take a good look at it. And if it did have a message for you, what would that message be right now? You might want to put that bead or whatever you have found into your pocket and keep it and remember that message. And I'm going to bring you back into this space now. So you're going to feel your feet on the floor. Take a few breaths in, out. Become aware of your surroundings. And come back into now.
That's lovely.
I think it's an example of how we can use, we don't have a bead in front of us, we don't have objects, but we can always use our imagination, can't we?
We can. I'm just remembering this heart. I don't know if I share this. This is what came into my thinking.
Is that like a stone? Is it a heart-shaped?
No, it's a bean. It's
bead.
Called a bean. They're
bean.
heart pods or something. They're called. My mum gave me one years ago. A little. Yeah, it came in a little thing.
Oh, how beautiful!
And yeah, but I found this washed up on in one of our fields because I'm right by the sea. It must be 30 years after I was given it. And it's funny. That's just that's the original one that I had.
Wow. And, oh my goodness! Yeah, they're so similar.
Yeah.
Oh. Yes, so we can, we can, even if we don't have physical beads in front of us, we can, or objects, we can still use our imagination.
We can, and we can hold it. That putting in the pocket.
Yes, take it with. The imagination is so powerful.
Penny, what else do we need to think about today? What else are we missing? Anything from what we wanted to talk about?
I think it's just about, are we relying too much on words? What else can we do as coaches?
Yeah.
And what objects can we use? Now, it doesn't have to be beads and buttons, but when you come off this podcast and you have a think about yourself, you could collect, anybody who wants to could collect a few items and see what do they represent, or a few stones. We might have people with
sea hearts, like I've got
seeds or small objects, and you can place them. Once you put them down, they know their place. And how are they in relationship to other things? What do they represent?
That's what I found objects really useful with clients, when they're really wrapped up in describing a very complex system. And you know that thing where they want you to understand it sometimes, clients, even though it doesn't really matter, they kind of want you to, and you're kind of losing track. But actually mapping it in that way, kind of creating a symbolic map, can be very helpful, and help me keep track of the important bits, you know, with my clients, rather than stuff that doesn't seem so important.
So I think it's about using your imagination and trying different things and practice. I think for all of us, for me certainly, it's about sitting back and practicing not getting so involved and thinking about what question am I going to ask next. It's trusting the process and letting go and sitting back and using other methods, being creative.
I'm reminded of that thing, you know, when we've worked training beginner coaches and talking about trusting the process. And I think it takes a while, but that's it, isn't it? That really is it. It takes a while to really, because you arrive first of all. I remember there were literally people with the Google list of the 50 powerful questions, and then finally it's okay, give up all of that. That's the process.
It only works when one of those powerful questions comes out without you thinking about it.
Yeah,
it's then much more likely to be appropriate. Yes, absolutely. So it's kind of letting go of the process. But I think we can only do that if we spend that time and looking after ourselves and working from the heart, working from the gut, and allowing the process to develop. Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right. I've absolutely loved this conversation, Penny. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to stop the live broadcast now, and you may need to rejoin just to see me again for a second. Okay.